Hello, this is Pup Adam, coming back for another episode of Kink Now. Um, I guess today will be the first all-around broad sense of what BDSM is, and what it should be, and what it can be. So first things first, BDSM stands for bondage and discipline, dominance and submission, and sadism and masochism. The terms are lumped together, that way BDSM can be a lot of different things to different people with different preferences. Most of the time, a person's interests fall into one or two of those categories rather than all of them. It doesn't always involve sex, but it can. Most people think BDSM is always tied to sex, and while it can be for some people, others draw a hard line between the two. Both are bodily experiences that are very intense, sensual, and cause a lot of very strong emotions in people who practice them, but they're not the same thing. The metaphor it can be more like a massage. Sometimes a massage, however sensual it feels, is just a massage. For others, a rub down pretty much always leads to sex. It's kind of similar with BDSM, it's a matter of personal and sexual preference. There is nothing inherently wrong or damaged with people if they're into it. This is one of the most common and frustrating misconceptions about BDSM. It's not something that emerges from abuse or domestic violence, and engaging in it does not mean that you enjoy abuse or abusing. Instead of enjoying BDSM is just one facet of someone's sexuality and lifestyle, it's just regular people who happen to get off to a certain way. It's your neighbors and your teachers and the people begging your groceries. The biggest myth is that you need this special set of circumstances. It's regular people who have a need for that to be their intimate dynamic. Now for consent. You can always say no before, after, or during a scene. And if a Dom or a Master wants to continue, then they're not the right person for you, or they don't have your mental or physical uh, things at mind. A lot of people starting out think that it's all or nothing, especially if you've only been with one partner. For instance, you might think that because you enjoy being submissive under certain circumstances, that mean you must agree to a whole host of submissive or masochistic behaviors that you're not necessarily into. Personally, for me, I've done pup play. I'm into light BDSM impact play, but anything that involves flogging or paddles, I will have to have a hard limit to. And a hard limit is just something that you are not willing to go past. Once it gets to a certain point, you want to use a safe word to prevent any more physical injury of more than what you can handle. Soft limits are like proceed with caution and be careful with how you're doing things. But of course, agreeing to one thing and having that be it for the entire scene, that's absolutely wrong. You can and should pick and choose which BDSM activities you are and you are not interested in. And that can vary depending on the situation, the partner, or even the day. Just remember that consent is a requirement in BDSM, and it's possible to consent to one thing while still objecting to another. Um, so kinksters are just as stable as people who prefer vanilla sex. I like to think so. But it's easier for people to get into BDSM if they don't have any history of abuse, obviously. Um, People who are more stable place in their lives. Who engaged in BDSM in the past year were no more likely to have been coerced into sexual activity and were no more likely to be unhappy or anxious than those who didn't do BDSM. And actually, men who engaged in BDSM had lower scores of psychological distress than other men. I like to think that because most of our needs are being handled then and there rather than other times. That said, BDSMers do not judge people who aren't into it, hopefully. And the term vanilla isn't meant to be derogatory, it just refers to non BDSM sexual acts or people who aren't interested in kink. So, 50 Shades of Grey is considered very cringeworthy in the BDSM community. I've never seen it, but from what I've heard, it's not entirely accurate. I was told that wires were used and the forms of bondage that were used in the movie were not and are not realistic of how things are done in real life and can lead to harming the physical body in terms of cuts, abrasions, or cutting off blood circulation, which is something you never do want to do. And what's worse than that is that there could also be permanent nerve damage going on there as well. If you ever find yourself at a BDSM meetup or dungeon, don't mention any shade of gray. While some people appreciate that the book spurred more interest in kink and may have made it less stigmatized, others take issue with the abusive, unhealthy relationship it portrays, which has happened and is portrayed in the movie very horribly. Um, all in all, it is not an accurate representation of the community. So, yeah, I guess that'll be all for now.